So help this make sense. 99% of people play in their childhood, have a lot of fun, until they're shipped off to school for 10 years to then spend 50 or so years of their life in an office, just like Severance, to retire with no energy, no soul at times, and a long unchecked list of dreams that they never fulfilled. Does this sound dramatic? Maybe, but this is the life of some people. So this happens because we're trying to make those sensible decisions, the things that people tell us to do to succeed in society, based on incomplete information and frankly guesses at times. But why is it that 1% of people seem to just lead those great lives? They have freedom, they have money, and they have fulfillment. And yeah, it's real. The life behind those Instagram posts actually are all the things I described. And I believe it's because they share one idea, one mindset shift, one question they've asked themselves that I'm going to share with you in the video today. And I think it's going to be groundbreaking for you because it was for me. So we've all heard the cliche that life is short, but there's a big difference, I think, between understanding it intellectually and then feeling it like deep in our bones. Let me introduce you to this concept that changed everything for me. And it's a simple yet profound question. What if? What if is one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself. And the weird thing about this word, it's completely neutral. It's neither positive nor negative on its own. It's shaped entirely by what follows it over here. So you're on this video, you may be asking yourself questions that I've very much asked myself in the past. What if I fail? What if I fail? What if I lose everything? I'm joking, but we say these things in our heads. What if I lose everything? These are very valid questions, or valid answers to the question, but these now modify what if to be negative. But remember, what if is neutral. It's here. It's neutral. There's no modifier here until we add one. But what if we answer questions like this? What if I succeed? What if I succeed big time? And this is one that scares us, actually. What if my dreams are possible? Now, these are just two questions or two answers to the question, but you understand here what I mean. So this question, what if, whether you say it out loud or not, it's going on inside your head. This question consumes our entire approach for how we look at this idea of living, whatever living means. Well, what's the opposite of living? Is it status quo? Yeah. Mediocrity? Yeah, probably. It's all those things. And what is living? Well, I like to think of living as thriving. So what if, let's add another one. I thrive. So this is what's possible for us and why I wanted to start the video with this question, because how you answer this question is game changing. So I learned this the hard way. My mindset coach came to me when I first engaged working with him and asked me to do what was supposed to be a simple activity, which was to close my eyes and visualize the ideal life without constraints that I wanted to create. It should be easy, right? It should be an easy activity, and yet it wasn't. I remember first sitting at a Starbucks trying to make this happen, and I had my headphones on, these Apple headphones, and I had everything blocked out, and I'm closing my eyes, and I couldn't see anything. Do you know what I saw? I saw what if. What if this happens, or that happens, or this isn't possible, or that's not possible? Or what if people judge me? What if it's not meant for me? What if living or thriving just isn't in the cards for me right now? That's all I could see when I was trying to do this activity. So sit with this for a second. Maybe you've done this before too. I could not imagine an ideal life. Like, how crazy is that? And what scared me is I couldn't even dream properly anymore. I'd been consumed by this question. I internalized so many limitations that I couldn't even allow myself to visualize what I wanted. It was extremely frustrating. So let me add on to this and show you a very interesting way that I like to think about this. So I'm going to draw 2 dots here underneath our question, what if, which consumes our life. This is what I call the gap, and not the clothing store, everybody. This isn't good. This is bad, the gap. So this is where we are now. So let's call this status quo. Status Q-U-O. And this is where we want to be, our ideal, right? This is living over here. Living the dream. This is the gap that exists between where we are now and living the dream. And our goal is to close this gap. But what's interesting is we don't start with the gap this wide. We actually often start with a very small gap, just like I'm drawing here, where we're standing here and it feels very attainable. This is within reach. It's just like, yeah, I could start that YouTube channel. I could leave my job and start a business. I could start that hobby. It's right there. It's within reach, but I'll kind of leave it for now. And then I'll turn over here and distract myself with Netflix, or distract myself with streaming, or distract myself with the phone. And what's interesting is we don't realize that as we keep doing that, this gap starts to widen. This gap starts to become bigger and bigger. And then you get to where I was when I just described to you, when I was standing here and my mindset coach was saying, dream your ideal life so we can give you the mechanisms to create it. And I'm literally saying, I can't find it. I don't know what it is. I can't materialize what I even want. All I could see was, well, maybe I want money, but even money stressed me out. And the only thing I could think of is, well, money is freedom. Maybe I want money. Obviously, I fast forwarded, and now, as you know, if you've watched my other videos, I'm in a much different spot. But it's very important to tell you where I was, because you may be right where I was here. And now I want to tell you what causes this gap to widen, because it's very, very important we understand this. So every day you postpone crossing this gap, there are 3 things that happen. The first thing is, because of these what if statements, self-doubt takes over. So let's put this here. Self-doubt consumes us. So this is the first one. So self-doubt starts to consume us. And what's interesting about self-doubt, it is incremental and it starts piling up. And it starts to consume how we see ourselves. And we started when the gap was small down here, when we had maybe one thought of self-doubt. But continual what-if questions over and over and over, guess what? They stack. And now you're dealing with so much crippling self-doubt over here that you think it may not even be worth trying at this point. And that's very much where I was. And so the second reason the gap becomes wider is the comparison trap. Because guess what? If you want to live, and your definition of living is chasing a hobby or a business, or getting involved in something that you're excited about, whether it's a sport or anything like that, what happens? We always align ourselves, or at least we pay attention to people on YouTube and other platforms that are doing the thing. So whether you're in the community with them and they're real people that you know, or you're watching YouTube and scrolling through Instagram and TikTok every night, looking at people doing the same thing you're doing, that continues to compound as well. And what's interesting is when you aren't moving forward and you're staying in the status quo, and other people have started closing this gap, here, the comparison, they are moving forward. And now this compounds because you have a comparison of where you could have been, what you could be. And now you feel more behind because not only did you not start, but you're seeing where they are and how fast they achieved it. And now it's a compounding trap that makes you feel like if I even start now, I'm going to be so behind and so embarrassed, it's not worth it. So we continue to squelch our dreams and push them down. So this comparison trap works hand in hand with self-doubt, because then these start to feed themselves. That's how this works together. But there's a third one. It's called the comfort illusion. Sounds like a Lady Gaga song. No, that's Perfect Illusion. The comfort illusion is where we start to rationalize with ourselves. This is where we start to say, maybe the status quo is okay. It feels good. I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe it's okay that living isn't exactly happening. And we start to literally rationalize, and we start to almost create like a block to this ideal living. And we also almost start to redefine it or put up a mirror in front of it that blocks it out. And then all we can see is this. And we start to rationalize that maybe just a few steps forward is fine. We start to degrade what we want. It's very interesting if you watch White Lotus, at the time of this video, one of the most recent episodes, the Parker Posey character, I love Parker Posey, and she says this in the line, and I'm not going to be a spoiler for you, but she's talking to the husband, and she says, I'm at the point in life where I don't want to be uncomfortable. And she's putting her expensive lotion on in the scene. Go watch it if you haven't seen it, and definitely watch the series if you haven't seen it. But very profound moment. Now, I'm not going to give a spoiler as to why it's so profound in this story, but unrelated to this story, it's profound because she's an example of what I'm talking about. And this happens the older we get. So I'm going to actually throw in a bonus fourth reason. I wasn't going to throw this in, but it just came to me because I'm talking about Parker Posey. I'm not saying Parker Posey's old, but I'm saying Parker Posey's not 20. She's not 25. She's older than that. And the age conundrum, I'm going to call it. So it's this feeling of, have I waited too long? We're too comfortable now. We're not those people that do those things. We're not the people that break out and chase the dreams. That was what we were supposed to do when we were playing in our childhood or in our early 20s. That's when it was supposed to happen. And those things can happen then, but guess what? They can happen now. They can happen in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s. You can see multiple examples of that. So this is very important to pay attention to, and this is why I think all this works together so that we understand how to close this gap. So to focus on these things and not get caught into these things by start answering the question differently. What if I thrive? What if I succeed big time? What if my dreams are possible? In the description, there is a resource that you can download. I call it my Break Free Action Guide. And these are the very worksheets I did to answer some of these questions. And I give you a methodology for visualizing how to answer the what if questions in ways that are positive, because then you can start to visualize that ideal life that I was struggling to do just 2 years ago. But don't just take my word for it. In my experience, let me tell you about some of the most successful people that we know that almost gave up before their breakthrough. And their stories are not about never facing doubt. They're actually about changing those what ifs that filled their gap. So the first one is J.K. Rowling. We all know her as the author of Harry Potter. But did you know she faced rejection from 12 publishers before finally getting this manuscript accepted? And she was taking care of her child as a single parent. So imagine the negative what if statements she was probably saying. Things like, what if no one ever publishes this? What if I'm wasting my time? Oh yeah, what if I can't feed my child? But somewhere along the way, she clearly changed her what ifs to things that probably sounded more like, yeah, what if this does work? What if this book actually does change people's lives? What if this is my purpose? What if this 13th submission is the one? Another example that we all know and love, Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah faced significant adversity, as we know, growing up through her life of poverty and all the things she talks about. But one of the stories that I find is very interesting about Oprah is how when she was working in Baltimore, when she was coming up through the news industry before she got into talk, they told her she didn't have the look to be on the news. She wouldn't resonate with people on camera, that it just wasn't working. And so they put her in the way she tells the story, with the Carvel ice cream man to basically do lifestyle television and talk personally and all those things with the person. And she lit up, and she knew it, and she loved that. And that's what got her into pushing through into talk. But what's interesting about her as well, when she went to Chicago, Before it even became the Oprah Winfrey Show, she was on one of the networks there. And even then, people were saying, what are you thinking? You're in the talk show game here, where Phil Donahue and all these other major players were. And she decided to push through anyway. So can you imagine her what if statements were probably like, what if they're right? What if I won't resonate with people? What if this is not my calling? What if Chicago eats me alive? But can you imagine if Oprah had let that consume her, where we would be today? And as we know, Oprah is the queen of mindset. So maybe she was asking herself some new questions like, what if my unique perspective is exactly what viewers need? What if they need to see someone like me on TV? What if this is preparation for something greater? So we can take the cue from Oprah and J.K. Rowling, but you know what else? There's another one. Bradley Cooper. We see him everywhere in major movies. But did you know when he was working on the TV show Alias, he actually almost quit acting because his part was dwindling. And he said he was seriously considering throwing in the towel because he had not gotten his breakthrough role yet. So can you imagine had he said, what if this is the end? What if my roles continue to dwindle? Where would we be now? Well, we wouldn't have The Hangover. We wouldn't have A Star is Born. Fill in the rest of the Bradley Cooper movies you love. This is an idea of what I mean by chasing our dreams. It's not a black and white thing. It's not decide and go and everything's perfect. This gap is going to widen the longer we wait. But when we answer, what if I succeed and what if I thrive? That is step one in reframing how we think about it and driving us towards success. Because I believe that's what happened with J.K. Rowling, Oprah, Bradley Cooper, myself, and other clients that I work with. When I see that mindset shift happen, big things start to happen pretty quickly after that. And that happened in my life, as I mentioned to you 2 years ago. So I've been really focusing on mindset for about that time frame, and look at how much I've achieved. If you've been watching this channel, you know I've been able to quit my job, start a business, and I've accelerated so many of my dreams in a short period of time, where I spent the better part of 15 years talking about them before making that mindset shift. So there was a decision here to say, I'm not comfortable with the status quo anymore, and I have to start to believe and visualize what ideal living looks like. I need to say, what if they are positive things? What if my ideals do succeed? What if they are possible? And then you start to believe them. And then the visualization starts from there. And that's when stuff really starts to happen. And so what did I do in my own life, like the celebrities I shared with you, to actually move from status quo to this idea of an ideal? Because it doesn't happen overnight. When I realized that I wasn't able to kind of properly identify the vision of what I wanted to do, I started putting myself in some different scenarios. And I started removing various blockers in my mind, saying, okay, if money weren't an object, this is what I would do. Would I travel? Would I buy a home? Would I start a business? What would I do? And I started answering some of those questions. And then I even put myself in different environments. So in Los Angeles, where I was living, I would go to the beach and I would change up the day. I would leave where I was in the Starbucks. I remember leaving that Starbucks actually when I was having that trouble, and I drove to Santa Monica Pier, or it may have been Venice. And I went to the beach to get myself out of that loop that I was in and focus on being present in nature, or at least LA nature. And what I was able to do is I was able to see, this is free. People are out there, they're walking on the beach, there are people skating. And I was able to drop myself in that moment and say, what would it look like for this to be my life? Would this be satisfying? This is relaxing. I'm relaxing right now. And I was actually able to then continue that activity at the beach, and even that physical movement actually changed my belief system of what I could achieve, because I was stuck kind of in a surrounding that was familiar to me. I would often see being in the coffee shop and working as kind of stressful, and I had been grinding on a lot of projects, and so I needed to shift that thinking by getting myself out of the environment. So these are all things that can work really well to do this, but you have to start taking action toward what's ideal first. Because here's the belief that people have that is completely false, that's holding us back. It's the feeling that I need to get a little bit more understanding. I need to get my head around it. I need to get more information. I need to get more validation from people in my life. I need to get more career development. I need to get more degrees. The list goes on. You need more. You need more of something to give you permission to actually take a step. And it couldn't be more wrong, because no matter what personality type you are, action shifts energy around, and action creates a different perspective. Because when we move forward physically and we also move forward mentally, things naturally start changing. The perspective shifts. It's almost like the camera turns and we're able to see a new frame of the same scene that we were in. That is key. So some small steps that I took in that process was, even before leaving my job to start my business, I started dropping myself in networking experiences with a bunch of entrepreneurs. I was listening to how they spoke. I talked about my dreams with them, and I was able to think about the world in a different way. And I was able to understand that my ideal, number one, was not as far off as it felt. And number two, I could see what an ideal looked like in someone else's life, and I could shape it for myself. So I could say, that's not the version of entrepreneurship I want that this person's representing. It's more like this one, or it's a mix of these two. So whatever that is for you, I think dropping yourself in that dream, letting yourself see it and believe it, putting words to it and saying, this is a dream I have, and this is an ideal. This is what living is to me. And I'm saying it out loud, and I'm going to start walking in the direction of it being true. And you can do that with mentally. So you can ask these what if questions. You can do that right now where you're sitting. You don't need to leave your home. You can do that, but you can take yourself to the beach. You can take yourself to watch the sporting event. You can take yourself to that class that you want to go to, the painting class or whatever. You can get into a music scene. You can get around a bunch of entrepreneurs. Whatever your living is, put yourself in the environment. These two steps are key. This is what we talk about in the Be Something Awesome community. The goal of Be Something Awesome is to help you remove these blockers and reduce the friction so you can actually build the dream that you want to build. And we do so through a community, and also through the process of first identifying what's underneath, so that we're not just trying to take massive action. We're actually taking inspired action that's oriented around our understanding of ourselves, our mindset, and what our natural desires are from the inside. Because my idea of living is different than yours is going to be. And we want to understand what that looks like so you can start to visualize it yourself and then practically create it. So this is so exciting to get to share this with you today. This was a bit of a full-blown whiteboard session. We have a lot here. Go ahead and take a screenshot. Go in the description and download the Break Free Action Guide. I think it's going to help you more. And also in the description, if you want to learn how to work together with me in the Be Something Awesome community, you can jump down there, find out information about that as well. And if you want to go deeper on hearing about when I left my corporate job and all the things related to that, you can jump over and watch this video, because I go all into it and show you how it actually is an ideal that you can create much easier than you think, if that's your dream. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Later.